Can Bing really be a serious Google competitor? Is an open standard encryption a good idea? And why did Google stop displaying Google Plus posts from its Google Graph panels? All that more in This Week in Organic, episode number 6.
This Week's in Organic. Live from London on thisweekinorganic.com.
Broadcasting live from London, welcome to This Week in Organic, the weekly show that debates the ramifications of the latest SEO and content marketing news. Sign up and watch the latest and the next show live at thisweekinorganic.com. Hello and welcome. I'm David Bain, and each week I'll be joined by some knowledgeable, opinionated folks to discuss the latest happenings and anything that impacts organic traffic. And as for you, dear viewer, get involved. We'd love to hear your opinion too. Just use the hashtag TWIO on Twitter, that's TWIO, and if you're watching live, your thoughts will magically appear in the chat box to my right-hand side. So let's find out more about today's guests, where they're from, and what's caught their attention this week. So starting off with Justin.
Oh, hi there. I'm Justin Deaville. I'm Managing Director at Receptional Digital Marketing Agency based just outside London. One of the things that's interesting me this week is looking at Google and whether Google is, we know that Google is basically close to being a monopoly. Is Google fixing its own search results to keep out other competitors?
Intriguing. And Matt.
Hello, thanks for having us, David. My name's Matt. I'm here at Atelier Studios here in sunny Southampton. Big fan. Sorry, technical. Yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of paid search as well as organics. Something that has really sort of caught my attention this week is the Let's Encrypt, which is the new security certificate authority that's backed by the likes of Cisco and Mozilla.
Yeah, that was a great suggestion of a topic from yourself there. So we look forward to discussing that a little bit more there. So Matt's working in a busy office there. We can hear in the background. But you mentioned Sunny. Talking about Sunny, we've got Drew with us as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Drew Broomhall. I'm Audience Development Director for Haymarket Media Group. We're an international media publisher across the UK, US, and yeah, what's interested me this week is probably the constant thing that we're seeing between Google, Bing, and Yahoo in terms of trying to grab market share, and what the implications of Yahoo perhaps shifting its SERPs away from.
Okay, yeah, lots happening, lots to talk about. So let's start off with the fact that Microsoft have announced a 10-year deal to power AOL search results. Now, with Yahoo included, Bing now has 20% of search results in the United States, but still less than 8% worldwide. So is there any chance that Bing will be able to rival Google's dominance over the next few years? Justin, did Google even want AOL's business?
I think to answer the first question, then I would say no. I don't see Microsoft challenging Google in a big way anytime soon. Certainly not from a search engine point of view. I think if you're looking at the UK, then Google's market share is 90% plus. Internationally, in the States, it's slightly lower than that, but it's still the dominant player within the market. And I think the history, if we look at the history of technology companies over time, once a company gets to the sort of size of Microsoft, it's much more difficult to be innovative in the way that it would need to be with search engine technology to take over Google. And the Google's brand, I think, is just too strong. Of course, it would have. Google still is looking to increase market share, so it would have wanted AOL's business, but I think inevitably over time, Google can only go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I mean, in the in about 2002, 2003 or so, when the first Google AOL deal was announced, AOL was a lot bigger in terms of share of search. Then now it's only about, I think, 0.6, 0.7% or so. So you could argue that Google are actually pulling back from that a little bit to perhaps remove themselves slightly from being accused of trying to control absolutely everything to do with search. It may be a strategic move not to actually try and take that business. Matt, what's your opinion in terms of Google's share of search? Can you see Bing making any further movement into Google's share?
I think one area actually would be their paid search platform, and it's not something that historically we've really explored for our clients, but last couple of months we've been sort of having a little look at kind of, their paid search platform, and I don't know if you guys are sort of familiar with the functionality in there, but it's quite advanced, and especially with the keyword insights that they're now offering, I think that's potentially a really interesting space, especially where you're dealing with clients that have got their customers where they're kind of using, Internet Explorer as their default browser, and they're not necessarily using Google as a default browser. I think that's quite an interesting space. I'm really impressed, actually. You sort of reeled off those statistics, they're just sort of straight off the tongue. But yeah, in terms of Microsoft competing, the other thing as well, personally, I think Microsoft have always been slightly behind in terms of their cloud-based offering. You look at the power of kind of Google Docs, Google Calendar, and that's kind of competing with Office 365. And think of all the information that Google are getting from their cloud-based services. And obviously, that's in terms of usability, all of the research they can gather from that. Obviously, that's fueling knowledge into people's search behavior and the way they're actually kind of using the internet. So yeah, I think Microsoft have always been slightly behind in that sense, personally.
So what about yourself, Drew? Are you or your clients that concerned about Bing traffic, or do you think you'll be more concerned about that in the future?
I think you can probably measure the interest with which I put Bing traffic, the fact that I do a lot of rank tracking across my sites, and I only rank track for Google UK and US, and I don't bother with Bing. The traffic volumes are so infinitesimal that I can't be bothered using my credits on. Do I see things changing? No, certainly not in the UK. I think for AOL, it's potentially quite a good move. AOL have just hooked up with Verizon, so we're perhaps beginning to see a return to or an attempt to return the web to its kind of portalized origins. And you can see that certainly with you've got Facebook effectively creating one walled garden. You can see other content creators wanting to try and create other walled gardens, and typically in those days you always had a decent search engine to go inside it. So for Bing it works out. That's probably going to drive a lot of US traffic. I'm sure they'll do a reasonable amount for their market share, but I don't see it doing a huge amount in the UK, certainly not for the sites that I work on.
Yeah, it's funny you talking about walled gardens. I remember AOL back in the early 2000s having a walled garden in their approach to actually access the internet, and Facebook now moving in that direction again. It moved away from that and back to that, and perhaps it's just a trend, not too sure. But in relation to what we're talking about there, Aaron Wall found that Yahoo were testing search results and ads powered by Google. So if that happens on a permanent basis, then this would actually shave a serious chunk off Bing's search world in the US. So do you think there's any chance of Yahoo getting into bed with Google and just delivering Google results moving forward? Justin, have you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'd almost ping the question back to you there. Say, what would you do if you were Yahoo? Would you choose Bing or Google? I mean, it's what's the most popular search on Bing? It's Google.
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to deliver what customers are looking for, then you need to deliver Google. And I would say that's it makes complete sense from Yahoo's point of view. Not to say the connections between the two companies in terms of former employees as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would I would be tempted to test something like DuckDuckGo, but that's obviously not looking at things from a financial perspective, probably.
I suspect Yahoo will be thinking of the financial perspective.
Would you be thinking of the money, Matt?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the question in my mind. Are Yahoo doing this to leverage a better deal from Bing? Maybe. Because is it something like Yahoo have to serve, is it 51% of Bing search listings. Is that the case?
Well, it used to be the case that they were completely tied to using Bing to power their search results, and obviously that agreement lapsed a little bit. I'm not sure of the exact details of the agreement that's currently in place, but obviously they can test different things now.
Yeah, I think Google having more market share, you could argue that that's bad news, but then do you remember the days of kind of Alta Vista, using a search engine getting...
What are you insinuating? Yeah.
Well, I just think better search results are a good thing, and if people prefer to use Yahoo, I'm not entirely sure why someone would prefer to use Yahoo, but should they want to do that and they get a better user experience, then I suppose that's a tick in the box.
So Drew, you obviously don't care for Bing that much. What about Yahoo? Can you remember when the last term you actually conducted a search on Yahoo was?
Probably when I worked for them.
Okay, right. Okay.
I worked for them for about 2 years, so yeah, it was probably around about that time, I would think. Sometime.
Oh, so sorry, what was that period?
2005 to 2006.
Okay, wow. Okay, so we're talking about 9 years ago.
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
that sounds about right.
I've probably done a little bit of kind of sort of checking of results now and again, but again I don't see significant volumes coming through, and when time is precious, you end up focusing on the things that are bringing the most traffic.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess if you're in the States, you might focus on a little bit more because the percentage are slightly less skewed towards Google. I think it's about 65% of search results are carried out in Google now, and you've got Bing and Yahoo and smaller search engines as well. But here in the UK, you've got about 90%. In Australia, you've got about 94% in Google, and it hardly makes any sense to focus in other areas.
Yeah, that's true. We see certainly in the US, we've got a lot of sites in the US, and we see much higher volumes there, and we do then actively track. But in the UK, it's just not an issue for us.
Absolutely. So, Matt, in relation to search results, you've been following let'sencrypt.org, the new certificates authority due to launch in September and backed by the likes of Cisco and Mozilla. So how is this likely to impact the existing HTTPS process? What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on there. I'm sort of just been reading up on it myself. But I guess the fact that it's a free SSL certificate that anybody can essentially use. So in terms of that barrier for sites that might not be able to afford getting an SSL, then I guess it kind of opens the doors there. Obviously, from an SEO point of view, it's a ranking signal, so there could potentially be advantages there as well. I mean, I think that it's going to be released in September.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see. I'd like to know as well how hosts actually react to that, because obviously they make a lot of money through obviously offering SSLs at a price. So in terms of access to that kind of technology and that level of encryption, I think from a usability point of view as well, that's really interesting because people are sort of getting used to seeing their browsers in a kind of safe mode. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it might break a few business models, and as you alluded to, it depends on how it's displayed within browsers as well. If it looks really obvious to the general day-to-day user that a site's secure, then the average user might get used to seeing that and expect to see that. Because I think even now, the majority of general users that aren't really technically focused probably don't generally look at that kind of stuff, but if that makes a big inroad into the general population, then that might be quite significant. At the moment, of course, about 22% of search results, thanks to Wikipedia and Reddit going HTTPS quite recently, on average are now HTTPS. Justin, do you think moving the vast majority of the web to HTTPS is something that is a positive thing in general?
Yes, I think the amount of time that I've spent during my career either trying to stop sites from getting hacked or having to deal with a client site when they've come, or a site when they've come to us and said they've been hacked, can we help tidy it up? I mean, from my point of view, that security is something that will make my job a lot more interesting. I certainly don't enjoy that kind of that work where you're not doing something creative, but you're having to go behind and clear up a mess where someone has been trying to hack a site, and I think it's still incredibly common. And so anything we can do to kind of to make sites more secure and concentrate upon kind of more interesting creative work, then I'm all in favour of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge with HTTPS is initially that was the excuse that Google used to not deliver the keywords within Google Analytics for organic search results, of course.
Yes. But I think there that I mean I have a theory that maybe Google Webmaster Tools, which has just been renamed as Google Search Console, may be a place where they will provide better data in the future. And kind of following up on the conversation we were having before about that competition between Microsoft and Google, then certainly Microsoft I think has been doing a better job at providing some of that webmaster information through its tools, and so maybe there is there's a competitive edge for Microsoft. It comes through providing that additional information to the likes of us, people who are interested in the digital sphere, so that we start working with them and maybe get people more interested in them again, even though as you say the levels of traffic can be very low.
So Drew, are you a fan of HTTPS? Do you want the whole web to move to that?
I am, yeah. I'm still amazed at the number of sites that I find that have pretty obvious security vulnerabilities and are passing, quite private user data through in unsecured ways. So I think it's a really good thing. I think if hosting providers get behind it, especially behind a free protocol that they can offer cheaply, that would increase adoption. I would absolutely recommend it. What I haven't done at the moment is kind of looked and gone, I've got to migrate all my sites to HTTPS, but I'd be very interested in any case studies where somebody has done that. So that's certainly sort of around this group to see how it's worked, because I think it's the direction of travel for everyone. I think we've got to try and get there sooner rather than later.
Okay, yeah, we've got lots of people tweeting using the hashtag TWIO at the moment as well. Someone called Anonymous saying that UK government planning to ban strong encryption. What a fundamentally stupid idea. Completely impractical. Medical records, banks. Does anyone have any knowledge about that at all?
Is that your answer, David? Not enough to kind of pass informed comment. I can make stuff up if you want.
I thought that's what you did. No, only joking. It's an interesting point, certainly. There are challenges with strong encryption and the lack of information getting passed there, but I guess that's the changing face of the web. It's really a modern communications tool, and it's changing very quickly, and it will continue to change very quickly. We've got some interesting tweets from Cider Fred Rush, so thanks for that. And I think a colleague of Justin's, Matt Treviss, so great to hear from you all. So keep on tweeting using the hashtag TWIO. But our next topic is Facebook, and Facebook have launched a new logo this week. But did you notice the difference? Justin, can you believe the difference they made to the letter A? I'm just so upset about that.
As soon as you mentioned that, I thought, I've been on Facebook every day this week. I haven't noticed a thing, David, but maybe I'm just unobservant. I'm afraid I'm an old-fashioned, direct marketer a lot of the time, and I feel that the kind of a brand is about your experience, and my experience of Facebook is that it's much improved, particularly on mobile. The shape of the letter A I care much less about.
Drew, have you got any passionate opinion about the letter A in Facebook now?
I am often amazed at the amount of time that people put into minor tweaks of logos. I seem to remember Marissa Meyer doing a similar exercise shortly after she joined Yahoo, and apparently she'd spent weeks kind of huddled in a room with various graphic designers, and only to come out with a fairly underwhelming kind of sans serif Yahoo logo. And it did kind of make me wonder, couldn't you be doing something much better with your time?
So yeah, apparently what's happened is the A has gone into single story rather than actually double story, which is slightly more modern. And what happened apparently was that initially when they launched, they wanted to be taken more seriously as a company, but now they're a bigger company. They want to be cool and with it, and not just known as old-fashioned. I'm not sure if they're ever known as old-fashioned. What's your opinion on this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not take Facebook seriously? New logo or not, like they're such a massive organisation. Yeah, I think personally for me, I don't like it. It looks less like a logo and more like a word. So yeah, I don't really think the juice was worth the squeeze on that one.
That's a good one. That's worth a tweet from someone. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. Let's see that in TWIO. Yes, absolutely. Okay, next topic. So according to the Kantar World Panel, Android now own nearly 65% of the smartphone marketplace in the US. But is this figure important? We know that iOS customers are less than half that, at just over 30%. So are Android customers more important than iPhone because there are more of them? Drew, what's your opinion of that one?
Well, if the market share is moving towards Android, then you would say probably yes. The product, certainly, we look at it from a product perspective, and the products that we're shipping as a media business, and we have to decide where we're going to put our development efforts. And it would probably be, historically, we've always kind of favoured iPhone first, and I think actually there is a little bit of favoritism towards that. Certainly, when you're sat in a room with a bunch of designers and they've all got Macs, that kind of, that Apple Kool-Aid, has been drunk quite long and hard. So you're kind of inclined to say, oh, well, we're going to support, Apple devices first. But I think it's changing. I think we're going to have to change with it.
I guess there's a couple of challenges with Android design. One is obviously the quantity of screen sizes. With iPhones, you've got fixed size screens, even though in app design you can now design more fluid apps that work vertically and horizontally. But with Android, there are still a vast array of different design sizes that you can target. And also, of course, Android phones tend to be on average cheaper than iPhones, so that's leaning towards the argument that people with iPhones generally spend more money and are perhaps a better target market to businesses that want people to spend money. Matt, do you think it's better to focus on iPhones still initially if you're a business?
To be honest, I think it comes down to analytics, and that might sound a bit cliche, kind of focusing on kind of SEO, but looking at the majority of our clients in terms of their actual, visitor base, I'd still say 9 times out of 10, the biggest kind of user group for web traffic are people on iPhones, and that overshadows, all of the Android phones and kind of browsers mashed together. So from our point of view, when we're sort of talking to clients and bits and pieces, we're sort of looking at that and thinking, well, okay, perhaps we should be designing the site around, iPhone screens, for instance, rather than sort of addressing the wider market. But yeah, I think it's really important that you kind of look at your target market and look at what your actual look at the technology your customers are using, rather than looking at general trends.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Look at your analytics, and obviously look right through your analytics to see what people are actually buying, and not just the quantity of visitors from a particular device. Because
Definitely.
Certain visitors could be browsing, certain visitors could be buying. Justin, are you an iPhone user or an Android user?
I'm firmly an Android user.
Oh, a cheapo.
Maybe that tells you I don't earn enough.
Okay,
but what I like is the openness. The kind of once I had an iPhone, then I'm stuck with Apple for everything. So I prefer that flexibility. But I think to kind of answer your initial question about the kind of the way the market is changing, I think what interests me is just the speed at which the market has changed over the last couple of years. If you think about how long it took, desktop PCs to get online and the number of them that there are, and now you look at the number of mobile devices and how quickly that change has happened. I think regardless of whether we're talking about Android or talking about Apple, I think just the number of devices, and when I'm looking at client sites now, I don't know if you guys see this as well, but the vast majority of traffic for some sites is mobile, so well over 50%, and that change has really happened over the last couple of years. And still, when I'm talking to clients, they're not still talking about desktop. Whenever you're in meetings, you look at the desktop version of the site. You're very very rarely looking at the mobile first still, and I would be encouraging clients to be thinking in that direction. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 clients where mobile traffic is still kind of at around 10-15%, but for the vast majority of sites now, it's a majority of traffic is mobile. And I think regardless of device type, encouraging marketers to be thinking about mobile first is still kind of a difficulty for me.
Absolutely, and going back to Matt's point, it's all about analytics as well, because certain industries are desktop-led, but other industries are completely and utterly mobile and tablet-led now, so very, very important to know where your visitors are viewing your site from.
Yes, we have, for example, a client who sells mobile phones. All of their traffic is desktop, because by definition you haven't got one.
Yeah, I mean, here at Analytics SEO, about 90% of our traffic is desktop, and that's because of the nature of what we do. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the case that everyone's moving to mobile. What about yourself, Drew? Are your clients struggling with the mobile conundrum, or by and large, are they building quite effective, responsive websites now?
Well, we build everything responsive, so I think we've had responsive sites for pretty much every single one of our brands for a couple of years now. What we are seeing across the board, across different business models, is a decrease in conversion. And that would be that an ad click or an affiliate click or an inquiry about a product, the business owners have been coming to us. I also run the analytics team at Haymarket, so the business owners have been coming to us and saying, "Can you explain this?" And every time when we start dividing the traffic down between desktop and mobile, we see that it's the difference in behaviour that we see in mobile that's causing the difference in conversion. That means that we've actually changed our approach to conversion optimization, and we're often doing a lot of mobile first stuff now rather than thinking about desktop. And in fact, on several products, we've got pretty much optimization roadmaps just for mobile with very little desktop on there, because we just see the number growing, and yet the conversions and the behavior that powers the conversions is still fundamentally different.
And it's obviously makes it a lot tougher to track user journeys as well, because if people don't convert on mobile devices and they come back on a desktop, it's about tying that visit together as well. Do you find it challenging to do that?
Yeah, it's still difficult to do that. There are various solutions out there. Obviously, Google has introduced user ID stitching, but that only works if a user is logged in. Most of the DMPs that are in market, are trying to offer some kind of cross-device identification. But they're all working on kind of probabilistic models, and you don't really know how effective that probabilistic model is. So it's still a bit of a grey area. I think it's going to get a lot better over the next couple of years, but people are still kind of feeling it out and trying to find a solution for what is an extremely complex problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, coming up, we're going to be talking about whether Google is self-promoting its own content in its search results, whether SEO and content marketing are actually inseparable, and why did Google stop displaying Google Plus posts from its knowledge graph panels?
You're listening to This Week in Organic, live from London, on thisweekinorganic.com.
But first of all, when you sign up to watch This Week in Organic Live, you're encouraged to socially share the show. And in return, we give you a shout-out. So, a shout-out this week to Dr. Mary Gowdy from your-lisbon-guide.com. And Stephanie Rodriguez, tuning in from Australia. You can find Stephanie at mightymediagroup.com.au. So if you want to shout out next week, you know what to do. But moving on to Yelp. Yelp is one of the companies listed as a complainant in the EU antitrust case against Google. And Yelp have sponsored some research into suggesting that Google is skewing local search results in its favour. So is this fair? Can local results be higher quality and more impartial? So Matt, what's your opinion on that one? Are you concerned with the quality of local results and staying within that Google ecosystem?
Yeah, this is a really sort of interesting topic, I think, at the moment. The fact that the study was sponsored by Yelp, I think, well, hang on a minute, sort of shunts the credibility of it in the first place. But actually, the problem itself, and this kind of dovetails really nicely with kind of, how-to content. And, Google's kind of now displaying this directly in the SERPs rather than people having to kind of click through, especially with things like restaurant listings as well. There's been some big changes there where they're starting to introduce the carousels so that people, if they're looking for a local restaurant, They don't technically need to click through to the restaurant's website. They can get the majority of information in the search, which I think is potentially a bad thing. Obviously, for local businesses, if they're getting footfall, it doesn't really matter how they go about getting that footfall. You don't necessarily need traffic to your website to achieve that goal. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting point. Can local results be higher quality? Potentially. I guess the thing is we just don't know yet.
So, Justin, are you satisfied with your local search experience, or do you think it could be a little bit more impartial?
I think I suppose I'm not so much concerned about its impartiality. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I mean, there's no point in me trying to comment on the antitrust case. I don't understand enough about Google's algorithm to be able to say certainly whether they're trying to tweak the algorithm in their favor. I would strongly suspect not. I think what they're trying to do is give users a better mobile experience, and therefore they're experimenting with the results that they show on mobiles, and often favouring presenting information themselves rather than directing people to websites, because Google wants to become that computer off Star Trek, doesn't it, which can answer any question from any person at any time, and give them the correct answer, and rather than saying to a website, if you can answer the question more quickly, then they'll want to do that on a mobile phone. And I've seen an example with a client that we work with recently, and they have got a number of different locations across the country. We'd optimized all their Google Plus profiles, all their local search pages, and we'd spent invested huge amounts of time in doing that. All their rankings were fantastic, and yet traffic dropped. And the reason that traffic dropped off was because a lot of people were searching for contact details, telephone numbers, that kind of thing. And Google was then taking them from the site, presenting them in the local search results, and people weren't bothering ever to visit the site. They were just calling direct from their phone, which you can say is great usability from Google's point of view, from the user's point of view, but it does disincentivize then the client from investing more in local search, because they're not seeing any traffic coming through to the site.
So, I mean, as an agency, is it possible to justify that kind of optimization, or is that really challenging and difficult to do?
Then I think it makes that argument more difficult to carry forward. I think in the end, what you're able to do is say, okay, the number of inquiries coming through to the business as a whole is up, and we reckon that a certain percentage of those have come through the Google Plus page or whatever it is that the user has seen.
Drew, have you got? Drew, have you got issues with Google Local at all, or are you quite satisfied with that generally?
I've never really optimized for Google Local, so I can only speak as a consumer. Generally, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing. I'm impressed with the leaps they've actually made over the last sort of few months in terms of beginning to sort of geo-target quite complex results. It's not just about local; it's actually about localized delivery of results in your area. So I've been looking at some of our job sites recently, and the transition from seeing kind of like looking for jobs in Surrey and just getting a list to actually kind of seeing quite precisely targeted sort of landing pages has been quite dramatic. So I think generally it's a good thing. I feel for Yelp, and I feel for any company who's struggling with what Google is doing, which is attempting to reduce friction, attempting to reduce the number of clicks it takes to get information. It impacts on a lot of businesses, not just Yelp, and it's very difficult to know what to do in the face of what feels like an onslaught, but from Google's perspective, just seems like good business sense.
Yeah, and I guess it all also relates back to them changing from being a search engine to a direct answers type engine, and it's not just about local searches; it's about getting that answer ingrained into everything that they're doing. Matt, I saw you nodding your head at a few things that Justin was saying there. Is that the way that you see things are going, that Google is moving towards direct answers, and that it's going to be very difficult for Yelp to actually take issue with what Google are doing?
Yeah, I think he's potentially right, to be honest with you. I think in terms of actually justifying local search to clients, if Google were able to give us as an agency some sort of reporting mechanism, so let's say somebody does interact with a local listing or whatever it might be, then that would sort of give us a bit of meat on the bones that we could then go back to clients with. But you've probably seen when you search for car insurance, they've now got their own kind of, you enter your registration number or whatever it is, and then it will start to give you quotes directly in the SERP. So it seems like for the minute they're only targeting, big industries, things like car insurance, for instance. I think as soon as they start to sort of go down those sort of niche industries, then I think potentially, it might start to upset some more people. But yeah, that's what I think.
So, Justin, can you see Google moving towards being able to deliver a better reporting mechanism to perhaps agencies to assist them with actually helping clients? Or do you think Google will continue as fairly closed shop and not that helpful when it comes to doing things like that?
I suppose if as an agency you're taking a biggest perspective as possible, then you should be looking at all different areas of the business anyway. And so whether you're able to generate traffic from PPC or SEO or through social media, it doesn't make a huge amounts of difference as long as you're satisfying that traffic and it's converting in whatever way the client wants. So hopefully it's possible to take a big picture view and not get too worried if the SEO strategy isn't delivering as much traffic, but instead it's coming via social media. I'm not too concerned from that point of view. As to what Google does, Google will do whatever they want to do. But I think Matt's right that they're kind of industry after industry. Whenever Google sees something it likes, it just builds another version of it and replicates it and then offers it for free in some instances until the market is taken over and then starts charging for it.
Are you saying they're a loss leader in some cases?
Yes. I mean, look at Google Analytics. If you produced analytics software 10 years ago, it was quite a lucrative market, and then Google Analytics comes along, and now everyone uses that, and it's free in most cases. That's taken over the market.
And then they taketh away.
Indeed, and then the Google Analytics Premium, and you start charging for kind of advanced features. But that's Google's, I suppose, got a near monopoly in search. They need to expand in other areas if they're to carry on growing.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens at this EU hearing to see if they try and stamp down on Google from any great height at all, and whether they actually have the power to make a significant difference as well. Yes,
and it seems to me that the EU is making bigger steps than say in the US. And as we saw with Microsoft, 20 years ago, then they were in a similar position. Everyone was concerned that Microsoft was a monopoly, and in the end, it takes governments to break up those monopolies and to kind of carve out a new market that other people can come into.
Drew, do you have any opinion on that? Can you see the EU making any significant change in the way that Google have to conduct themselves in the future?
They can try. There's been probably more legislation done in the EU, such as the right to be forgotten, than there has been in the US. Point out that a lot of it is also founded by a largely sort of anti-Google media over here. I used to work for News Corporation, and everyone knows Rupert Murdoch's views on Google. But you've got some big players, Axel Springer, for example, who are the biggest publisher in Germany. They've got numerous sort of court cases that they've raised against Google for things like Google News inclusion. There's a very vociferous kind of sort of body of people that's sort of led by the media, accompanied by a whole bunch of vested interests, who aren't really going to let this go quietly. But I think, given the sort of international nature of Google and the way that they operate, the fact that they're operating services in the UK from out of the US, I think it's always going to be quite difficult to pin them down if the EU do actually try and push some legislation through.
Yeah, we'll watch this space. So this week I read a post on writingtheweb.com called SEO and Content Marketing, a love story, saying that SEO and content marketing are distinct yet inseparable. So is that your experience? Justin, you've obviously, you work for Receptional.com, so an agency that has focused on SEO and I guess moved towards content marketing a bit as well. Do you see these two different areas as silo activities, or are they completely ingrained?
No. I would want them to be working in harmony, and I think there's very, very different skills required in each area. But what I encourage amongst the team here is that that everyone is able to do a mixture of different things, and so you're able to understand Google Analytics and how a site is working. You might also be writing blog posts and then promoting those blog posts, but you also need to understand the technical aspects of how a site works. And obviously, we have specialists in each area, and I think there are always going to be different disciplines. It takes a very different personality to be looking at the very technical aspects of a website and make sure it's working in the way that we want it to, so that Google can access the content in the way we'd like. From someone who's creating really well-written blog posts which aren't technical but appeal to a wide audience. There's very different skills, and I would see people in the same team working on the same client, but bringing different skills and expertise into the kind of the SEO party, for want of a better word.
So, Matt, SEOs and content marketers, are they two different people working together, or is it possible for one person to completely be comfortable with both SEO and content marketing?
Do you know what? I'm going to throw a third person into the mix. I think there's a bit of a love triangle going on between SEO, content marketing, and online PR. I think we've all seen that the lines between online PR and SEO have kind of been blurring over the last kind of 12 to 24 months. And as Justin quite rightly said, SEO kind of teaches us to look at the technical aspects of kind of getting content out there, making sure that it can be crawlable by search engines, and I think that's absolutely spot on. PR is more about getting a story out there, whereas traditionally with us as kind of SEOs, we're like obsessed with backlinks, right? Anchor text, let's get the right links there. Whereas, like I say, online PR is kind of about having something newsworthy to say and actually trying to resonate with a target market. And I don't think they can work in silos anymore. With content marketing, that's really interesting because the best content marketing either solves a problem or tells someone something they didn't already know. And for us here, that kind of gets us to think about the whole buying process. So if anything, they're complementary. So to sort of have them operating in silos is potentially really dangerous, and actually throwing paid search into the mix. And then you've kind of got these four kind of things all working together. You're getting lots of keyword insights. You're putting content out there that actually the target market wants to know about. And you've got the PR angle as well. So you're not just focusing on backlinks. You're actually looking at, industry-related websites. Because I think, I don't know about you guys, but, sort of putting all of your eggs into Google's basket is an inherently risky strategy.
Matt, you've taken it from pairing to a love triangle to a love square.
Yeah.
And Drew, are we going to move into Pentagon here with you?
We're not going to move into a Pentagon. I'm always slightly baffled by the concept of, certainly, but by the shift towards content marketing. I started in this game as a journalist. I'm actually an online journalist for about 3 or 4 years before I really got into SEO. So when I started doing it, I was always looking at it from a content perspective. So for me, we've always been marketing content. Certainly in the media, we've always been in the content marketing game. What's changed, obviously, is the nature of the tactics and the reliance on the tactics. I suppose you can't get away with the cheap tricks that you used to be able to. So you've now got to work a lot harder. Excuse me, I've got a plane going overhead.
We can hear, yeah.
Yeah, I live far too close to Heathrow. Not very happy about the third runway announcement. I'm sure. Yeah, I think it's gone. So I'm seeing the same thing in terms of PR. The fact that we're needing to perhaps push content. We're very familiar. We're very comfortable with the idea of content marketing. It's kind of what we do. We find that we do have to shout a lot louder, and that means that we are deploying much more kind of PR style tactics and actually beginning to skill up internally in that area in order to deliver. And I think that's a big change. I think one of the implications, I'd be interested certainly in the agency perspective here, is that I think these tactics, when deployed for SEO, they're harder to do than the tactics before. The constant complaint I've heard from agencies is link building isn't as easy as it used to be. It requires much more creative input, and it takes a lot longer. And I'm wondering whether that's filtering down to the way that clients understand content marketing now? Are they willing to, to wait longer for results and perhaps looking for different KPIs than they were before?
So, I mean, the link building has obviously become a lot more difficult, but because it's become more difficult and obviously you want to do it right as well, does that mean that too many people aren't even doing it at all and they're losing opportunities there? Do you think that's the case, Justin?
I mean, most of our clients are promoting their sites in one way or another. So it's difficult for me to answer that question. I would say, well, yes, everyone's doing it, but I think you're right. It's about setting expectations. And if I was starting to work with someone, I would want to kind of work out a plan and say, okay, here's where we're expecting to be in 12 months' time. Here's the steps we're going to take. Let's agree an editorial plan. Like as Drew did, I used to work in journalism, and so when I was publishing magazines, we used to have an editorial calendar for the year ahead, and that's the sort of way that old-fashioned way that I would want to work if I was producing content for a website. And so then everyone knows what content is going to be produced, and you can start thinking about which audiences you want to target, and when deadlines are due, and when you've missed deadlines, you can chase people up, and then and everyone knows then they've got to share the content and promote it at particular times, and that's just for me how a journalist or anyone who's creating content would work.
Yeah. So Matt, you mentioned PR actually into the mix. You talked about that. So are journalists the new content writers within agencies?
I don't think you have to necessarily be a journalist to write good content. I think you need to understand what it is the customers are looking for. I think having excellent copywriting skills is something that doesn't come around every day. So I think from what we get from kind of online PR is focusing on industry news sites. Not just gearing things up just for Google. Try and control the controllables. You've got more control over placing a piece of content on an industry site than you do trying to manipulate the rankings. In terms of actually writing content for us, it's just about trying to create something that resonates with the customer.
Okay, so try and control the controllables, and if you do it well, the rankings will happen because of that.
Yeah, well, obviously nothing's guaranteed, but I think you've got a higher chance of success. And we're starting to see that, industry news sites, they are gaining in authority, which, if you can get a piece of editorial on a news site, you could argue as well that that's a more credible source of traffic, potentially more targeted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're buying links in newspaper websites like what happened a couple of years ago, but maybe let's not go down that discussion maybe at the moment. Just one final topic. Google have dropped the displaying of Google Plus posts from its knowledge graph panels. So is this because they don't want to display self-promotional content too prominently, or is it actually the fact that Google Plus as a social network is on its last legs? Justin, are you an avid Google Plus user?
I used to be on Google Plus the whole time. I was promoting it heavily with clients. I thought, I was promoting it as the next big thing. Google, I remember a couple of years ago, Google were really pushing the PPC team here to be, promoting Google Plus. Everyone's bonuses at Google was going to be based upon the success of Google Plus. It was this huge thing, and I haven't seen it take off in the way that I would want if I was going to focus on it in the future. So I don't, I use it much less now personally, and also for clients. I recommend it less. Unless I happen to see that they're working in the tech industry or somewhere where it's much more popular.
So do you think that they're not displaying Google Plus postings within these cards simply because they're recognizing the fact that people really aren't using the service that much?
I think there must be an element of that, and there's always lots of rumors on about Google Plus dying, and I'm not sure how much credibility I'd give to those, but it seems to me that the idea of Google Plus was that it pulled everything together so that you could have all your services under one username. It was forcing you to access YouTube via Google Plus, for instance, plus any other services you wanted to, and it seems to me that that's not necessarily what users want. They want, they're looking at individual apps to do individual things, and so Google is now having to kind of break everything back down again.
Yeah, and there's some wonderful services integrated as part of Google Plus.
Yes, absolutely.
We're on Google Hangouts at the moment, obviously, and that's absolutely superb. And hopefully they wouldn't even dream of taking that away. But I guess we'll see. Drew, are you a Google Plus user, or what's your opinion of Google Plus as a social network?
I'm not an avid user. There are some interesting and very, very busy communities within Google Plus, often in the tech space. For example, there's a very good Google Tag Manager community for anyone who's into GTM and Google Analytics. So it's found an audience, but it's not found a big enough audience. Personally, I think it's kind of perhaps served at least part of the purpose I think Google intended, which was really all about identity management. It was about being able to identify anonymized users and convert them to known users. And when you look at Google Plus and its place in the product suite, which includes Chrome and Hangouts and Gmail, it clearly worked pretty well as a mechanism for conversion. It hasn't taken off as a social network. It sounds, I think they announced a few weeks ago that they were going to sort of rip it apart and take some of the bits that they like and turn them into standalone products like the Google Photos. So they're probably kind of scavenging what they can from it, and have decided for fairly pragmatic reasons that it just doesn't have a place in the SERP center.
So Matt, has Google Plus served its purpose? Are Google quite happy with that, for it to go away to the place that old Google products go to?
Do you know what? I think maybe Google should just decide one way or the other. I don't know why, but it just seems like Google Plus has always been a bit clunky as a social media network, and it almost seems like the ugly duckling of kind of the overall kind of Google services. Doesn't seem to, just from an outsider looking in, doesn't seem like it's got the same level of investment as some of their other services, which are much slicker, work a lot better. Facebook, Twitter, social media networks are absolutely flying. I completely agree with the guys. From an identity management point of view, it's really, really good. But as a social media platform, no, I think there's a lot left to be desired, really. And I think perhaps Google should. I wonder what the ramifications would be if they were to shut it down. What effect that would have, on kind of the other services that it's connected to. I know that Google Business, my places for business. There was a couple of months ago you could kind of integrate the two. So you'd have to link your kind of Google Plus account to it, and that again was a bit of a nightmare for us. Really, really clunky. The usability again was really, really tricky. So it's not something that I personally devote too much time to, probably because there's so many other social networks out there. Posting on all of them seems to take all your time.
I guess it's a little bit scared that a new social network is going to just completely take away and have everyone's focus in the future. You've got networks like Periscope, like Meerkat, personal broadcasting services that people are using in their thousands at the moment, and Twitter obviously own Periscope, and you've got image networks that are very popular as well. So you just wonder, if Google Plus isn't working that well, then are Google really going to actually find out that they have a fairly old business model that relies on search, and perhaps people are moving away from search to something else. So it'll be intriguing to see what happens. Have you got any concerns for Google, Justin?
Oh, that's right. How much does Google make each quarter? Is it about $10 billion a quarter? Oh, I'm very worried for them, David. I think there is a problem, which is that they are so enormous, and so it is very difficult to be able to move quickly in the way that they used to. And I still think they're kind of. It appears to me to be a developer-led company, in the sense that they do release things, products like Google Plus, and they release it in a fairly raw state, and then develop it afterwards if the market likes it. And it may be one of those instances where Google Plus didn't take off in the beginning because it wasn't refined enough from the outset.
So Drew, if you had control and you could actually say keep it on or switch it off, which direction would you move in?
I think I would gracefully retire it.
Gracefully retired, yeah. Matt, can it be gracefully retired, or has it got to be killed fairly quickly?
Yeah, I'd bin it off, mate. Bin it off straight into room 101.
Justin, room 101.
No, well, I think there has to be something there, doesn't it? I have to be able to log into my Google services. I have to be able to get into a Google Hangout today. I need to use Gmail. I still want to use YouTube. All of those services, are now built around Google Plus. So you might call it something different, but that's that something still needs to exist.
Great. Okay. Well, I reckon that takes us to the end of our discussion. Just just time for a single takeaway and some sharing of find out more details from our guests. So starting off with Justin.
Oh wow, there's so many different things. I remember there's a point that Matt made at the beginning about Google and Bing, and we were all being horribly dismissive of Bing, weren't we? But I think I think there's a distinction there between organic search and paid search. And I think the point that you made was it may only be 5% or 10% of the market that's searching on Bing in the UK, but that's still, if you're a paid search advertiser, a 5 or 10% increase in traffic and conversions just by replicating a successful Google campaign on Bing. I think that was an interesting takeaway.
Absolutely. And where can people find out more about you if they'd like to go and do that?
At receptional.com.
Great stuff. Okay, and Matt, what would your kind of single takeaway and contact details be?
I think Justin took the words out of my mouth with regards to the Bing stuff, but actually just linking kind of AdWords and Google My Places, like local search together, you can now incorporate your My Business reviews into your Google Ads. And I think that's a really interesting development with AdWords. It increases your real estate on the page. So for those that didn't know about that, go and check out that piece of functionality because it's really cool. If you want to know more, then just visit atelierstudios.com.
And Drew, someone's taken away all your beautiful trees away.
I was running out of battery power, so I've had to beat a retreat inside.
Lovely. Okay. Well, what would your takeaway and contact details be?
We were talking about the sort of desktop and mobile conversion thing earlier, and that's something that we as a business are obsessing about. So my takeaway would be start thinking about the difference in user intent that kind of underlies probably what you're seeing in terms of conversion, and then start thinking about how you can start moving people from kind of one experience to the other. Try and sort of synchronize the sort of experience you're providing across mobile and desktop. A lot of the times, you don't really have the capability to do what you want to do on a mobile device, so you've got to kind of sort of work with that rather than against it, which is what most people are doing at the moment. If people want to get in touch with me, it's Drew Broomhall on Twitter.
Great stuff. Okay, and I'm David Bain, head of growth here at analyticsseo.com, and you can also catch me interviewing online marketing gurus over at digitalmarketingradio.com. And if you like what you're listening to, we need your help. July is voting month for the UK Podcasters Awards, so if you want us to win one of those awards, go to thisweekinorganic.com/vote and cast your vote. So you can vote no matter where you are in the world, and your support would be really appreciated. So that's thisweekinorganic.com/vote. Also, if you're watching this as a recording, remember to watch the next episode live. So head over to thisweekinorganic.com and sign up to watch the next show in real time. So until next time, have a fantabulous weekend, and thank you all for joining us. Adios. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for being part of it.
Cheers.
No problem. Thanks.